Need pull as a source of innovation. Now, another space in which we can look for innovation and another set of tools and techniques is what's sometimes called outcome-driven innovation. An ODI, outcome-driven innovation, is a framework method for thinking about what people actually want and what they need, and then translating that into jobs to be done. So it's a way of really articulating what the needs are to which we might deliver an innovation. And it focuses very much on what the real needs are rather than the ones that first present themselves. And a classic example of this is the very old question originally posed by the marketing writer Theodore Levitt, who said, when people buy a drill, is it because they want a drill, they need a drill, or because they need a hole? Now, if you turn that and find the real job is a hole in the wall so I can hang a picture or a photograph or something, then it's very different from saying I need a drill, and it drives a very different innovation agenda. So, jobs to be done, a methodology particularly associated with a man called Anthony Elwick, but basically jobs to be done tries to help us understand what it is our users, our customers are trying to achieve. What are the jobs they're trying to do? What are the needs they're trying to satisfy? What are the problems that they're trying to solve? And they're going to value, innovation again, something which helps them get those jobs done better, or sometimes get them done at all. But essentially it's a way of very much putting the end user in the driving seat and seeing what their needs are, using that to pull our innovations through. So, jobs to be done and innovation? Well, here's an example over time of how that kind of model plays out. We've had a job we needed done for a very long time. Basically, food goes bad. And so if we haven't got a way of preserving it, we have to throw the food away, or if we eat it, it could do us harm. So preserving food very early on was a big need. That was the job to be done, and we met it first of all with salt. Salt was one of the first mechanisms we used to preserve food. We might throw in a few spices to make it taste okay, but essentially that was food preserving. Until after we used salt for many, many hundred years, we got the idea of ice harvesting. And essentially ice, cooling things down, is another way of preserving their life. And what happened in the United States and elsewhere in the world was a whole business grew up around harvesting ice. Flooding a field, letting it freeze in the cold winter weather, and then harvesting, just like harvesting corn. Cutting it up, rolling it into blocks, wrapping it up and shipping it where people could use it in their ice houses to preserve food. It was a big industry, employing hundreds of thousands of people, cutting millions of tons of ice. But that job to be done was eventually done better by the deep freeze. Mr. Linde, working in his lab in Munich, invented refrigeration, and within 40 years we had the central deep freeze. Refrigeration where you could have stuff frozen for you, preserve your food, you'd rent some space in that deep freeze. But of course it wasn't long before somebody said, well, why do you need to rent their space? Why not have the domestic refrigerator? And so we've got a history of preserving food, particularly one associated with keeping it cool, which is all to do with user needs, with meeting those needs, with dealing with the jobs to be done. Now that brings us neatly to the world of user-led innovation. These are pictures of Model T Fords, but with slight variations. This one, for example, an enterprising farmer has nailed some planks, now he has a goat transporter. This one said, I never use the seats in the back, so I'll throw them away, now I can take hay out to the fields. And this one realised that the original iron wheels on a Model T Ford are pretty useless in the snowy winters of the Midwest, so developed a different version, a snowmobile. Now they're all real pictures, they remind us of something farmers do a lot of. They improvise, they innovate. They're doing it primarily to meet their own needs. They particularly want it. Characteristic of people like that, they've got a frustrating need, they want something done, they have a high incentive for innovation, and they don't mind if the results aren't perfect. In fact, most of them just want to solve their own problem. If someone else can benefit, well, that's a bonus. It happens in all sorts of places. Frustration is a powerful source of innovation, and it often drives users to create something. In the world of childcare, for example, disposable nappies were not invented by Procter & Gamble or the other companies. They were essentially frustrated women, worried sick about the business of washing and washing and washing. There must be a better way. User-led innovation. The collapsible buggy. Owen McLaren, when he went with his daughter to a trip to the States, saw how she struggled down the steps of the airliner and through everywhere, and thought, if only we had something that was collapsible, that would make life so much easier. Frustration. Now, since he'd worked on designing retractable undercarriages for the Spitfire aeroplane, he knew a thing or two about how you might make that happen, which is why we have McLaren buggies today. And of course, many other people making the same basic idea. But it began life as a user-led innovation, born of frustration. And the little cup, which stops drinks and other stuff spilling over clothes, making more washing. Very, very simple innovation, but essentially didn't come from a plastics manufacturer or a children's care company. It came from a user, frustrated. And it's not just in the world of childcare. Linux, the operating system behind so many devices today, essentially is the product, and has been over time, of many frustrated users, programmers saying there must be a better way. Let's create better software together. It's user-led, user-driven. Now, of course, not every user wants to get involved. So we have a spectrum, once again, from passive, just give me something that solves my problem, fixes my job to be done, right the way through to active users like those we've just seen. And essentially, this is important to bear in mind, because users are a source of innovation, but we may need to work with them in order to bring their ideas out and to perhaps help partner up with them, or as they become active users, help them scale and develop their ideas so others can benefit from them. We'll come back to this theme of user innovation.